best officer in the service. When General Winfield Scott received the news of Robert E. Lee going to the Confederacy, he didn't criticize him, he didn't badmouth him, he didn't call him names, he simply said, the United States lost the best officer in the service. Now, before we get to the 7 Days Battle, I'm going to give you a little Washington, D.C. history, because we'll be there. You know where Robert E. Lee lived? Anybody know where he lived? Yeah, he lived in Arlington, Virginia. You know what they put around his mansion in Arlington, Virginia? Come on. What was built around a cemetery? And we know today as Arlington National Cemetery. Now, a lot of kids don't know that. The house on top of the hill in the middle of Arlington is Robert E. Lee's home. And they buried Union soldiers from the Civil War right around his house to disgrace him, because obviously he moved out of that mansion when the Civil War started. So when we go to Arlington next year, the graves closest to his house, which are in a garden area now, are those of Union soldiers to disgrace him. And it turns out, kind of gives me goosebumps because I've been there, and you'll get it when you get there if you haven't, is that turned out to be the greatest hallowed ground maybe in the world, Arlington National Cemetery, on Robert E. Lee's plantation. Interesting story. Okay? And now we have Northern soldiers buried there that were killed in the Civil War, Southern soldiers that were buried there, from the Civil War, some still unnamed. Famous generals, 2 presidents, the people that served our country, including Trevor Johnson, by the way. Picture up there, Trevor Johnson's anniversary of his death was the 27th. I taught with his mother in Colstrip. Long story, we'll get into that later. Trevor's anniversary of his death was last week. Killed in Afghanistan, buried in Arlington. Our kids visit him there every year. And it's turned out to be the greatest memorial of valor and service in the world. And at the time, it was simply to do something mean to Robert E. Lee during the Civil War. Okay, that'll take us to our next subtopic then, kiddos, which is the 7 Days Battle. How long do you think that lasted, Rachel? A week. Okay, remember I told you the Union and the Confederates are going to skirmish in several battles in Virginia. The second going to be the 7 Days Battle. Now, this will be the first battle involving who is commander of Confederate forces? Robert E. Lee. So we talk about the Civil War. The first battle he was involved in was the 7 Days Battle. And that occurred from June 25th through July 1st of 1862. June 25th through July 1st, 1862. And it was fought near Richmond and was referred to as the 7 Days Battle. So the first battle involving Robert E. Lee as commander of Confederate forces was fought in Virginia from June 25th through July 1st, 1862, and the battle was fought near Richmond, was referred to as the 7 Days Battle. Well, again, General McClellan's Union Army had marched from Washington, D.C. towards Richmond and were crossing the James River en route. Okay? So again, Union General George McClellan and the Union Army were marching from Washington, D.C. to Richmond, and they had just crossed the James River on their way to Richmond. Well, this time it's going to be the responsibility of 3 Confederate commanders to stop McClellan's advance to the Confederate capital. Who are these commanders going to be? Lee, Jackson, and Jeb Stuart. So it's going to be the responsibility of General Lee, General Stonewall Jackson, and the Confederate cavalry under the command of Jeb Stuart to stop the Union advance towards Richmond. Again, what's cavalry? Horse soldiers. Very good. Horse soldiers. So, as Union General McClellan is marching Union troops from Washington, D.C. towards Richmond, crossing the James River en route, it will be the responsibility of General Lee, General Stonewall Jackson, and the Confederate cavalry under the command of Jeb Stuart to stop the Union advance towards Richmond. Well, to make matters short, during this 7 days battle, the Confederates again prevailed, forcing General McClellan and the Union troops back across the James River, back to Washington, D.C. And again, the Union Army fails to deliver a blow that's going to end the war at the Confederate capital. Okay, last thing we'll talk about today is the second Battle of Bull Run. Second Battle of Bull Run. That's why we had a first. Second Battle of Bull Run. President Lincoln's not really happy about events, so what does he do? He again changes overall commanders of Union forces, and he replaces General McClellan with General Henry Halleck. General Henry Halleck becomes the third overall commander of Union forces since the Civil War started. So Lincoln, displeased with the progress of the Union under the tutelage of Union General George McClellan, replaces McClellan as overall commander of Union forces with Henry Halleck. And what Halleck does is he forms a new Union Army, which is going to be called the Army of Virginia, ironically. He's going to call his new army the Army of Virginia. So President Lincoln replaces General McClellan with General Henry Halleck, and his first action was to form a brand new army, which he would call the Army of Virginia. Now Halleck was kind of interesting. He was an overall commander, kind of like Scott. He wasn't as old as Scott, but he's going to allow someone else to be his what? Field commander. Very good. And the man that Halleck chooses to command this new Army of Virginia will be Union General John Pope. So John Pope is going to be the field commander and will command this new Army of Virginia for General Henry Halleck. Well, they organize this army, and General John Pope decides to make another advance towards Richmond on August 29th of 1862. So after they reorganize Union troops into what they call the Army of Virginia, and after Halleck gives field command to General John Pope, Pope decides to make another advance towards Richmond on August 29th, 1862. And on that date, the Union Army of Virginia met with General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army, and where did they meet? Bull Run Creek. They met again at Bull Run Creek. So on August 29th of 1862, the Union Army of Virginia, under the command of John Pope, meets the Confederate Army under the direction of General Robert E. Lee, again at Bull Run Creek. Again, Confederates hold the day, and they force Union troops back across Bull Run Creek, back towards Washington, D.C. Well, Lincoln isn't very happy about this loss, so what does he do? He changes commanders again, but he goes back to McClellan. He switches and replaces Henry Halleck, and he goes back to George McClellan. So how many different commanders has he had? 3. How many changes? 4. Very good. So after another Union defeat in Virginia, President Lincoln replaces General Halleck with George McClellan. Now, what has the South done every single time in every single battle we faced? They've been on the what, though? Defensive. They have never gone on the offensive, have they? Of any of these we talked about? Well, General Lee gets a little confidence over these continued victories in Virginia, so he makes the decision, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take the war to the north. We're going to go on the offensive. That's what we're going to do. They had never done that before. Now, there are three parts to General Lee's offensive. He and his staff made the decision to try to do three key things at this point in the Civil War. They're going to go on the offensive. They're going to do three things on the offensive. What might they do to try to recoup losses? What might they do because they've been on the defensive and lost areas? What are they going to do? Try to gain control of what? Regain control of the Mississippi River. So that's the first thing they're going to do. They pretty much lost control of the Mississippi River, right? So the first thing they're going to do on this new offensive is they're going to try to regain control of the Mississippi River. In order to do that, number two, what are they going to have to regain? Have they gained Vicksburg and Mississippi yet? No, but what are they going to have to regain the river? Tennessee and Kentucky. So the second part of their offensive strategy is they're going to regain land in Tennessee and Kentucky. They have to do that to gain control of what? Mississippi. And the third and most important thing is they decided they would go on the offensive in the Eastern Theater, which means they're going to take the war to northern soil, right? But not quite, but pretty close. What they're going to do, please keep this in mind so you understand it, is they've decided to invade the state of Maryland, which is considered at the time a border state. We'll talk about that. So the third part of this offensive, and most important, is Lee makes the decision that he's going to march northward from Richmond and invade the border state of Maryland. What's a border state? We have 5 border states right now in the Civil War at this time. What are they? The border is just kind of a term, but what are these 5 border states' philosophy? Neutral. They haven't made up their mind. And we had 5 border states that had not made up their mind whether they were going to support the North or South. Maryland was one of them. The other 4, Kentucky. Remember I told you the influence that Henry Clay had? Kentucky was considered a border state. Didn't choose either side. Guesses? What? No. Indiana's going to be north. Missouri. Very good. Missouri is a border state. So we got 3 out of 5. 2 more. One of them we talked about quite a bit, kind of. No. Where's most of the fighting been? Where's most of the fighting not been? In that West Virginia. The part that split off never did make up their mind. They certainly weren't going to be south, but they weren't sure they were going to be north either, so they were a border state, West Virginia. And then in New England state, that was kind of unusual, but one New England state was considered a border state, which is really unusual because they're so far north. Here's your New England states here. Which one? Nope. 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 Oh. D. Delaware. Delaware is your other border state. So, in backing up, General Lee and his staff make the decision to try and do 3 key things at this point in the Civil War on the offensive nature. 1, they're going to try to regain control of the Mississippi River. 2, they're going to attempt to recover lost ground in Kentucky and Tennessee. And 3, they're going to go on the offensive in the Eastern Theater and invade the border state of Maryland. Because what's Maryland close to? Well, actually, you could even almost say, yeah, the capital, the northern capital. Now, the first battle on the offensive, and I want you to put this in your notes, is known as Bloody Antietam. Bloody Antietam. This will be the battle in the border state of Maryland. And we're going to just start it out with one comment before we get into it, because I'm going to lecture on this and I'm going to show you a video on it. Okay, now there were 3 reasons why the Confederates wanted to win a victory in Maryland, and then we're going to quit. 3 reasons why they want to win this victory in Maryland. Go on the offensive and go to this border state. First one's pretty obvious. If they win in Maryland, what's Maryland going to do? They're going to join the Confederacy. So the first purpose of winning an important battle in Maryland would be to get it to change from a border state to a Confederate state. Obviously, if you win there, you're going to be there, right? You got to go with winners. If Maryland, if this victory at Antietam is a Confederate victory, do you think these guys are going to join the Union? If it's a Union victory, you think they're going to join the Confederacy? So the first reason why they wanted a victory in Maryland is to convince the state to go into the Confederacy. The second reason is a victory on Union soil might convince President Lincoln to what? End the war and give up and let them have their independence. So they feel like if they can get a victory in Maryland, that President Lincoln might say, you know what, this isn't working so good for us. We're losing in every battle in the Eastern Theater. Now they're winning in Maryland, very close to the capital. We better just get this thing in and give them their way and let them have their own independent country within the United States. That was a goal they thought might happen if they wanted Maryland. The third reason is Southern soldiers were a long way from any food, and a victory in Maryland would give Southern soldiers access to food they desperately needed. Because Maryland was full of good, rich products, and a victory there would be able to feed the Confederate Army, depending on what their next move would be after a victory in Maryland. What do you think the natural thing would be if they won in Maryland? Head to Washington, right? If Lincoln didn't capitulate. So, General Lee is going to march his Confederate troops from Richmond, Virginia to Maryland, and we're going to have a heck of a dust-up known as the Battle of Antietam. Okay? We'll talk about that tomorrow for a bit, and then we'll show you a video on it. Pretty good stories. We're going to, again, find some of these unnamed people that fought in these battles and tell you a little bit about them.